Welcome to the Down to Learning Show podcast series, episode 85 with independent learning tech analyst John Lay. Today I interview Bill Sheehan, Global Head of Association Strategy at D2L, about the current state of learning and education with associations nationally and globally. You can find more of our fiercely independent content at talenttolearning.com. Well, welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the Talent to Learning Show. Thanks for joining me again today. As you know, on this show, I'm fortunate to interview the world's leading experts in learning solutions from both the vendor and the practitioner perspectives for the good of all, so we can all learn. Today is no different. Well, maybe it's a little bit different. This might be my favorite episode ever. We'll see. But our expert has a long career of expertise working on both sides of the fence, on the vendor and the practitioner side. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by Bill Sheehan. He's the global head of association strategy at Desire to Learn D2L. With over 20 years experience, Bill's been at the forefront of helping associations evolve by providing innovative solutions that enhance member engagement, generate non-dues revenue, foster organization growth, all the things that we talk about in association learning every day. His career includes roles with organizations like Multiview and Vital Source, where he's driven impactful learning strategies for associations worldwide. So Bill's the perfect guest for this episode, because in this episode, we're going to dive into the current state of education and learning with large associations and nonprofits. We're going to explore how associations are navigating the post-pandemic challenges, competing with those pesky for-profit providers, leveraging technology, driving new types of learning experiences, and how to stay relevant in this marketplace that's certainly evolving. Our conversation will focus on the currency of today and evolving trends. And we're going to wrap up with how organizations can future-proof their learning strategies. A lot to cover in 30 minutes, but we're prepared to do it. Bill, welcome to the Talent to Learning Show. It's sure great to have you here.
John, thank you so much. That's a wonderful introduction.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have you here, Bill. Let's start at the top. Pandemic sparked changes everywhere, including associations, maybe especially associations. What's the biggest shift that you've seen from before and after the pandemic?
One of the things that has remained paramount in associations today, across the globe, worldwide, be it a professional trade organization that, represents corporations and companies, or the professional societies that represent the individual, the one thing that any of these organizations has really been designed to do is to protect, promote, and advance that particular industry, either for the companies itself or for the individuals themselves to advance in their career and become smarter so that they can provide valuable services to their members. But the one thing that is kind of rampant throughout the association industry, again, worldwide, is this churn. There's a lot of churn going on in the association space. There's a lot of churn going on both sides of the fence.
And why is that?
It was kind of brought on by COVID, and due to the fact that a lot of associations, and in fact, I think, in the history, this is the first time that we were all affected by a particular instance, in this case being COVID. In the past, when you had financial breakdowns or you had financial disruptions across the globe, it didn't impact all industries. Some weren't impacted as others, but COVID did. COVID touched just about every single thing an organization across the globe. And what happened is, because associations are typically funded by, member dues and other services such as events or publications, advertising, sponsorship, non-dues revenue, they were all impacted. And because of that, associations were affected both from an administrative standpoint, losing staff, because their budgets were also affected in a negative way, meaning they had to reduce staff, reduce services, and even dip into the reserves, which is always a huge concern for associations, and particularly the board of directors that are responsible for guiding the association. But the one thing that stayed very prominent and very valuable for associations was education. and learning. And now that we're coming out of that situation, learning is still top of associations' product offerings and service offerings. And I think now, because and you touched on this in your introduction, there is a lot of competition in association space, not just from other trade associations, but from other for-profit entities, publishers, for example. They understand the very aspect of an association. They oftentimes have the members because they're producing the publications and they know who the members are, and they're providing some of the similar services. But where I think associations in today's age are in a very unique and I think a positive position is to become that single source of truth in providing education and learning, because their industry is made up of subject matter experts and their organization is made up of subject matter experts who are getting this information, vetting this information, ensuring of its accuracy, and then disseminating it to the members so it can be viewed as trusted, accurate, and complete learning and data coming from the association. Whereas others, some of the other competitors, you don't know if it's coming from a subject matter expert. You don't know if it's been vetted. And oftentimes the objective of the for-profit entities is not necessarily the same as an association that's designed to protect, promote, and advance the careers and the organizations of their members. And so there is a fiduciary responsibility of the organization to ensure that the information they are disseminating is the standard, is vetted. And I think that's where associations can really rise above the clutter in education. So it's an extremely exciting time to be part of the association community and in the learning and education side of things as well.
So associations, thank you. Associations has always had that mission of providing education. As you mentioned, there's other, and we both mentioned there's other sources that you can go to now, and there's this thing called the internet that's out there and YouTube. So is the is the art the trajectory of associations still ascending, or is the importance of associations in the world, you think, kind of leveling off with all these other sources of information? And how do associations feel about that? Do they feel they're ascending, or do they feel that they're struggling?
Well,
What's your theory on all that?
yeah, that's an excellent question. You're starting to see some of the research coming out within the association space that there's a lot of optimism in the association space. Now, this when during COVID 3, 4 years ago, there was there was a plateau. Members, because they were either let go for their jobs, were not renewing memberships in their organization. Other economical types of situations were causing companies to revisit if we're going to reimburse individuals for their membership in an association, given the current climate at the time. So there was an extreme amount of concern in the association space, 3, 4 years ago. Now, keep in mind that associations typically will experience some of the effects of an economic downturn or a negative impact on a particular industry. Oftentimes, it's not as immediate as we're feeling it in the corporate side. Because the way associations are funded, sometimes they get their member dues the first year, and so renewals might take 3 or 4 months grace period. So you're looking at somewhere between 15, 16, even 18 months of time before the association faces the impact. So the associations, as the economy across the world started to improve, associations were still caught in that lag. And so of lower membership dues, they couldn't go to events to generate non-dues revenue. Everything was virtual. And so the economic impact on the association was felt for quite some time. And they're starting to come out. We're starting to see more and more folks attending in-person events such as instruction-led training, trade shows, other networking events. So the association environment is starting to see the renewals and membership increasing over time since the last year and a half, almost 2 years. So optimism is really strong in associations. But yes, the competition has not gone away, right? What has happened is associations became incredibly innovative. They had to come up with new ways of engaging with their members, through technology, through webinars, through a digital means to stay in touch with their members. And they had to operate more quickly than normal, where associations and being a former association exec, you do have to go through a process of ensuring that your moves are, acceptable to the board and to the committees, and ensure that the monies and effort that are being spent on behalf of the association are in alignment with the board's policies. But COVID changed all that. They had to operate very, very quickly, and associations were very successful in doing that. So you're starting to see a lot of momentum, a lot of optimism, and even more and more of the general public starting to see the value that associations can provide their members, particularly when it comes to learning. So you ask a very good question. There was a plateau, and it was extremely concerning, but we're coming out of that. We're starting to see an uptick, not a hockey stick, but we're seeing it. We're starting to see an uptick in that.
Hockey stick's got to start somewhere. So tell me how this has impacted how associations approach education. Did they learn anything from the pandemic? Has it changed how they design and deliver content? Has it had an impact? What do you think's different now than it was 4 years ago already?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because 4 years ago, prior to COVID, you didn't have too much of a hybrid interaction. You had a lot of instructor-led training, either on site at training centers around the world, or at events that are being educational events that are being put on by the association. The one thing that associations did learn is that their members, their learners, if you will, consume education differently. Some like the audio, some like video, some like a combination. Some do like individual type of interactions. A lot of learners want feedback almost immediately, and you can't do that necessarily in a live event. You could now, through technology, because of some of the personalization engines, the analytics that you're seeing even during a test. Are some learners spending too much time? Are some learners skipping altogether? So what happened with COVID is it really provided the opportunity for companies and those who are providing learning solutions to really get a better grasp on how learners are consuming and engaging with content. And it varies by age group as well. So that's the one thing I think the silver lining of something like COVID was it really made companies like D2L. We've been around for 25 years. We certainly understand how learners consume and learn. But what I think happened for most of the learning companies and most of the learners was that they had to look and engage with technology in a much different format than they're used to. And they had to adjust. They didn't have the choice of going on site, or they didn't have a choice of just taking it in a hybrid where you did some digital and some in person. It really forced everything to be somewhat of in a digital format, which tended to lean itself to more of a monologue where it was one way. And now with technology, you could have a conversation and you could adjust to the learner's needs appropriately. And I think associations were looking at that because they were the one source that was there to provide that trusted, accurate, and complete information. But the way it was delivered and consumed is what was changing. And I think associations adapted very fast on that. And that's what I think the silver lining is, there's multiple ways our learners are engaging and utilizing our content. And that now can be deployed not only in a digital format, but also on site, where you can actually have utilizing the technology and have more of a face-to-face interaction too. So I think, again, associations are well poised, and I think COVID actually forced that much quicker than normal.
Another thing that I think, thank you. Another thing that I think COVID forced is really equilibration, if that's a word, of learning technology around the world. It could be perceived a decade ago that North America was ahead of the game. Now, necessarily, I don't think so. It's much more on par, no matter just about anywhere you're at in the world. So, how does that affect associations in general? Do you see, because you're a global head of the association strategy, do you see a difference between how global or international associations from an American perspective or Canadian perspective are different than North America associations? Is it all the same to you? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's interesting because it will be there is yes, the answer is there is differences across the globe on how learning, particularly one that's really important now, and we're experiencing some of this, is just access to internet and Wi-Fi, believe it or not. You know, you would think this would be so pervasive across the world. It's not. So one of the things we need to learn, we're looking at, and associations are helping do this, is to ensure that there's from an equity standpoint, that everyone has access to the internet and to Wi-Fi and to other types of internet access points. The other thing that you see too is that some, particularly in North America, you'll tend to see little longer forms of engagement with educational courses, whereas across the country you're starting to see more micro learning, where you're taking learning in snacks versus meals. A lot of times, particularly in North America, there is a tendency to try and get everything done in one, two, or three settings. Whereas worldwide, they tend to elongate that a little bit. The good thing about that is oftentimes, depending on the learner and depending on their occupation, they're actually having to take some of these courses while they're on the job. And so it's really important that those tests and the way that the education is being presented in this long form often tends to either be put off here in North America and done at different times. But when you're seeing more of a micro learning, you're starting to see much more engagement and much more higher scores, if you will, because they're not spent over 2 hours or 3 hours or 6 hours. And you're starting to see that now, particularly in the medical side of things, where they're trying to
Mm,
really revamp their education offerings and taking it from a very large 8-hour course into bits and pieces of, say, half an hour courses over time. So that's what you're saying. It's really the way that the education is being presented and applied in that shorter form, versus here in North America, we tend to do it much more in a longer format, and that you're starting to see that change. So not that the North America or US is leading it. We're actually learning from other parts of the world on how education is being consumed and what's working and what's not working. And at D2L, we spend a lot of time on that. So when we're working and providing our product and services, particularly to the association community, we like to bring in that intelligence to say, hey, this is how that younger learner is accessing data, because that is the future for associations, right? It's that younger age group that's
mm,
coming in. And if you're not presenting that education in a format that is acceptable and engageable, for lack of a better term, by that younger community, they will go elsewhere. And that's been
hmm
proven. So at D2L, we spend an enormous amount of time focusing on the best way that education should be presented, and we work with the association staff and their subject matter experts to do that, and we're seeing success in that. So I think associations are starting to pick up on that, learning what's working worldwide and applying it here locally.
hmm What role do you think AI, if any, has played on association learning? Is AI comes in every one of my discussions, so just throw it out there to see if you think that's important or whether we got bigger things to worry about.
No, that's incredibly important. I think it's on the forefront of everyone's mind, particularly in the association space here. I will say, I want to preface anything that just let's remember that AI is not a subject matter expert, right? It all has to start with human intelligence. So, there's a lot of fear that the AI will displace a lot of employees within the association space. And the fact of the matter is not, and I'm going to give Microsoft a little bit of a call out, but AI really should be seen as a co-pilot, right? In other words, nothing happens with AI until you enter data into it so that it can start to process and think, and you're constantly refining it and the like. There's a lot of concerns around AI, particularly in medical, particularly in government relations with writing policy statements. The organizations have to do, but until if you don't accept AI or it will replace you. I mean, it's just that pervasive throughout the industry across the world, and it's getting smarter and smarter and smarter every day. And there's tools coming out every day. If you don't believe me, just go take a look at, there's a website called There's an AI for that. You'll see all the applications that are coming online, moment by moment, and discipline by discipline. What I mean by that, like HR specific, marketing specific, what have you. But AI is probably the number one concern of associations across the board. And what I mean by that is a disruptor. The concerns for association right now are obviously based on research, are non-dues revenue and member acquisition and membership renewal, in dealing with diversity and equity and inclusion. Those are all really part of an association's makeup, but AI is now part of its DNA because it affects all of that. And so it does help to minimize the amount of time that can be spent on driving courses or course creation, for example, on the education side. You'll see a lot of companies coming out with new tools. D2L has just come out with a new tool that has been incredibly productive for several, probably 4 or 5 of our members have written back to us saying this new AI tool has really reduced our time, increased our efficiencies, and allow us to kind of reallocate our time on other critical matters of the association. And it also is being well received by subject matter experts. Those are the volunteers of the association. They're asking these subject matter experts to spend time to review and generate courses. But the technology that we've brought out, they've written us and say, this is phenomenal. And so you're going to see that once you truly understand the practicality that a AI tool can bring to your association, not with fear that, oh my, it's smarter than me, it's going to replace me, but it's going to support me. It's going to basically enhance my current intelligence and help me really refine and become more efficient on what I'm truly trying to articulate, be it course development or a press release or a marketing piece for a trade show coming up. I would not look at it as a negative. I would look at it as a positive. The same thing happened. I'm going to date myself. The same thing happened when the internet came on board, right back in the mid-90s, right? No one's going to go online. No one's going to register for a conference. No one's going to come to a conference. Well, once the associations truly understood how to apply that technology within their makeup, it became a very strong resource tool and basically made them more productive and more efficient. AI will do the same thing. It's not going away, but it can become, again, a co-pilot and a strong aspect of your organization. And that's why, again, D2L spent a lot of time bringing out Lumi, and we're starting to see huge results from that. And I think others will see huge results from how they're implementing a specific AI tool as well, as long as you're not relying on it to be the subject matter expert. Okay, it is just an assistant. That aspect of verifying the information still relies on the human brain and the human comment. So that's not going away. We're just going to become
Not going away yet.
Not going
All
away.
right, fascinating discussion. We're already at the end of our half hour. These go so fast. So association professionals or the association industry is changing. It's changing post pandemic. It's changing from technology. It's changing because of AI. It's changing because of increased competition out there from other sites. That's a lot of change for any organization. What's your best advice to organizations, associations, to manage all that and start the process of future proofing their business? I know that's a big question. That's a podcast on its own, but
It
in a
is.
couple minutes or less, what do you think is your best
I-
advice?
I'll try and give my best answer here, John. I think if there's any organization that understands change better than anybody, it's associations because they represent such a wide variety of folks, either individuals or companies. And they're constantly changing, whether they know it or not. They have to adapt almost daily. And so, if anyone can handle change, it's the associations. They did it through COVID. They did it through other economic times. They became that single source of truth that represents the industry, that's there to protect, promote, and advance that industry. And so the association has a lot of subject matter experts from their board of directors to their committees to the staff. The staffs oftentimes do not give themselves credit. They understand how the organization runs. They understand the industry sometimes better than their members because they deal with it so many times. And because of that, they're kind of ahead of the curve and they know what's needed for the associate for their constituencies that they represent. So if there's one thing I say, just embrace the change. I think associations better than anybody have become comfortable in being uncomfortable because their industries are changing. They're not one unit. They represent an entire industry. And so the one thing I would say is embrace it. You're not going away. They're looking to you to lead through change, through positive times, through not so positive times. And that's why they continue to renew and participate in the industry. So the one thing I would say is embrace the change and keep doing what you're doing because you guys have been very, very successful at it. And we're all counting on you.
Sage advice. Bill Sheehan, Global Head Association Strategy at D2L. It's fun working in the association space just in general because of all the things that you mentioned. That the dynamic is just different. It's just broader, and there's this do-gooder sense that always I think goes through all the work in here, and so it's thrilling and it's fun and it's encouraging to get a professional like yourself and just hear your enthusiasm bubbling over for the space where it's at, where it's going. That's really great. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Bill, for being on the show today. It's great to have you.
my pleasure, John. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Awesome. Listeners, you can go to d2l.com and check out their learning system. Perfect or certainly ideal for a lot of different associations, among other organizations, and try to get more information about that. Listeners, also, thanks for tuning in to another episode, the 85th episode. Holy cow, how did that happen already? I hope you found value. I sure did. It was a great discussion and we hope to see you on the next. And you can find more of our independent resources at talentedlearning.com. Thank you and have a great day.